Welcome to Grief and Gratitude Podcast. We're your hosts, Mandy and Crystal.
This is a space for honest conversations about loss, healing, and everything in between. Each week, we share stories, perspectives, and moments that remind us that even in the hardest seasons, gratitude can still exist. Thank you for sharing space with us. We're really glad you're here. Hey everyone, welcome to Grief and Gratitude Podcast. Today we have a special guest and I will let Crystal introduce her.
Thank you. Today we're here with Hope Love. Hope Love is a childhood friend of mine. For 30 plus years we've known each other. She's also my work partner. So we work in the mental health field together. We invited Hope with just the knowledge of her many experiences and connections to both grief and gratitude. Today, Hope's story is going to be centered around the loss of her children to the system. So people are aware this is an area she's going to be speaking to. So Hope, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you both for having me. I feel really fortunate and grateful to be able to be here with you guys and to share my experience with grief and gratitude, particularly related to relinquishing custody of my 3 older children. I think it's really important to kind of give a little background context to like what led up to that, to the pivotal moment, I would say, where the grief started. So I'm from Burlington, and when I was a child, I grew up in a home where there was a significant amount of abuse and neglect and parental substance use. My mother, I have a lot of compassion for her today. There was a long time that I didn't, but today, I can see how she really tried the best that she could, but she didn't have the skills to move through life in a healthy way, in the sense of being able to experience discomfort and process and integrate her own emotions and feelings and experiences. And, as someone who's worked in this field for a really long time, I can understand how her addiction developed. So she had a significant crack cocaine and heroin addiction. She was also very physically abusive, and there was a lot of neglect in the home. I have 3 other siblings, and I'm the oldest one, and I experienced the brunt of it. What I can take from that situation is I learned a lot of unhealthy things. I didn't learn how to process emotions in a healthy way. What I saw was a lot of avoidance or yelling and fighting. There was a lot of domestic violence in my home. And I also learned to self-medicate with substances. My mom never actually used drugs in front of me, but I knew that it was happening, and I knew that she was checking out from reality. And I was very young. I mean, this was in the most formative years of my life. Because of the situation that we were in, DCF Family Services got involved, and we were removed from the care of my mom and placed with my maternal grandparents. And that's when I met Crystal. I was in 6th grade, and we ended up going to the same school together. And I think my grandparents really tried. They were very unprepared to care for 2 children. It was me and my sister that went to live with her. They were unprepared to care for 2 traumatized children, and they didn't know what to do. And I didn't get any help for the issues that I had. Also in that home, there was a lot of avoidance of emotional experiences. People didn't talk about their emotions, and they didn't resolve them in a healthy way. I remember my grandmother would get mad at me or someone in the house and would just lock herself in her room for days at a time and wouldn't talk. And I constantly had this fear of when was she going to be okay? So it just compounded the trauma that I already had, and compounded my inability to deal with emotions. So when I was a junior in high school, my grandfather died, and it was a big loss for me. He was like my father. And that's kind of when things really shifted for me, in the sense that I didn't know how to deal with it. My whole life changed. There was another disruption in my experience. And so I was introduced to drugs and alcohol. And I remember the first time that I used, it was phenomenal. It made me feel so much relief, and I felt good. I didn't have to think about the pain I was experiencing or the things that I had been through. I felt comfortable in my own skin. And I felt like I could relate to people because I didn't feel any of those things before. And so it really escalated from there. I dropped out of high school and I developed a very serious addiction to alcohol. I ended up meeting this man because I had like a moment where I was trying to get my life together. I was 18, 19 years old, homeless and really struggling. And so I went to Job Corps in Virgins and I met this man and we started dating and I got pregnant like 4 months into our relationship and I got pregnant with twins. And so we moved to New Hampshire and I was not prepared to be a mom at all. I did not have the skills. I never had anyone, especially as a young child, model to me like how to be a parent. Like that's as a parent now and as a parent who's parented children in a more healthy way, I'll say. Like I didn't like my job is to model to my children how to grow up and to be an adult. And I didn't have that. So I was not prepared whatsoever. It was extremely stressful and overwhelming. I was also in an unhealthy relationship and I was literally just trying to get through every day. And we ended up having a third child a few years later. So I was 20 when I had the twins and then I was 23 when I had my son and life was a mess. I mean, we were very poor. He couldn't hold down a job. We struggled to get by every day. I mean, I could keep a roof over my kid's head and feed them and change their diaper. But as far as like emotional connection and nurturing, that didn't exist. Like I didn't know how to care for them in a loving and attached way. I don't know that I ever developed any attachment with my three older children. Not for a lack of trying or not for a lack of desire. Like I only knew what I knew. I didn't know that I didn't possess the skills to do that. And so him and I ended up ending our relationship. And so then I'm a single mom with three kids and am extremely stressed. Like I just did not know what to do. I chuckle about it now, but at the time it made sense. I started using drugs again. And so I had these three children at home and I was using crack cocaine and opiates, which progressed to heroin use. I started and I just started moving people into my home that were drug dealers and very unsafe. It doesn't feel good to talk about these things in the sense that I made a lot of bad decisions for my kids, that really put them at risk. But I didn't know any better. And so my addiction just spiraled out of control. And I was not taking care of my children in the way that they needed to. My daughter had a heart problem and like I couldn't even bring her to the doctors to get it taken care of. Like I just couldn't function. I would wake up every day and I would just try to blot out what I thought was a miserable existence. It was just this perpetual cycle of just despair and use. My kids were like, they had no control over it. And so they weren't taken care of in the way that they needed to. What ended up happening was my people in my life, like my grandmother, my mom's mom, who I still had a relationship with, were very concerned. And so they started making reports to DCF. And DCF came to the home a few times to do like welfare checks on the kids. And I was very scared. I knew something wasn't right as far as how I was living, but my ego wasn't willing to admit it. And so I would lie to them and like try to say like everything's fine. What people are saying isn't true. And then one day they came to the house because they had heard that I was using drugs. Back then, DCF social workers this was 2004, DCF social workers would collect a urine sample in your house. So DCF comes to the home. My home is a mess. Like I have no heat in the house. I'm heating the house with an open up. All right. I got toddlers running around. It's not safe. There's bags of trash on the porch because I don't have the money to take care of it. I have no food in the fridge. Like it is a shit show. So they come and it's a fucking mess. Like, and they're like, you need to collect a urine sample. And I was like, fuck, like I know I used drugs the night before. And like there was part of me that still wanted to like lie and say everything was okay. Like I wanted to hold on to that because to admit the truth would have been too painful. And I would have started this trajectory that I didn't think that I was going to be able to handle. So I'm like, no, everything's okay. And they're like, all right, we're going to collect a urine sample. So we go in the bathroom And I'm sitting in this bathroom on the toilet, and this woman's in there with me. And for whatever reason, I had this moment of clarity as I'm sitting there. I'm scared shitless, and I just have this thought that I'm doing to my kids what my mother did to me. And it just came out of nowhere. Like, it was the most honest and the most humble thought that I had ever had in a very long time. And I like saw the truth in that split second. And immediately I just told them, like, you got to take my kids. This is what's going on. And I just put it all on the table. Like, I'm a mess. I'm using drugs every day. I cannot do this. I don't even know how to take care of these kids, and you need to take them now. And so the police came, and um, I packed a bag for them, and they left. And I remember sitting by the window and just watching them get in the police car. And like, my heart was just broken. But I also felt relief because I wasn't going to be living, well, at the time I thought not living a lie anymore, that I was just going to be truthful about what was going on. That moment of clarity is really a gift. It was not of me. I don't know what it was, but I'm really grateful that I saw the truth in that moment, because at the end of the day, like, I had always said I wasn't going to be like my mom. And I was determined not to do the same thing she did. And ultimately, on some level, I did. So after that day, so they leave in the car, and I immediately went on a drug bender. Like, I was in so much pain. I was like, I need to not face this for a few days. So I went on, I just started using drugs again. And got really fucked up for a few days. I went to DCF, and they wanted me to get into treatment. And although I had that moment of clarity that day, my ego still wanted to, like, not admit. There was parts of me that didn't want to be fully honest. And so, like, I called the treatment program. I told them, I lied to them for them to say that I didn't meet criteria for treatment. And so then I could say to DCF, I don't know what I said the other day, but it's really not that bad. I don't know. I wasn't ready in that moment to get sober. And so I didn't go to treatment. My kids went into foster homes. And I was in so much pain because, like, I felt like I had failed, especially as a woman and as a mom. I feel like there's a lot of pressure in some ways, rightfully so, to, like, be a good parent. But I wasn't, and I knew I wasn't. Like, I wasn't healthy. And so I just started using even more. My use progressed. One of the byproducts or consequences of having DCF take your children is you lose your benefits. So I lost my housing in 30 days. I had no income because I wasn't working. I lost my food stamps. I couldn't feed myself. So I was homeless. I was not going to visit my kids. I wasn't trying to get a job. It was every day I would wake up, I would remember what had happened, and I would get fucked up. And then I'd go to bed, get up the next day. And it just went on for months on end. It was so painful. Like, any time that I was sober, I would think about my kids and not being with them and how horrible it was. It just, like, broke my heart and my spirit, even though I knew it was the right thing to do. It was really painful. And I felt a lot of judgment and shame from other people. And I don't know if anyone, like, did it in the sense, like, I don't even know that anyone, like, did anything to make me feel that way. It just felt that way for me. Although, my family didn't really have contact with me anymore. And then, like, one of my son, so I had my girls and my son. My son went to live with my uncle. And so that made things weird for me. Like, I just knew everybody knew, and it felt horrible. And then also, like, interacting with DCF, the way that the system is, I don't know that I had any bad reactions, but I also knew it felt like me versus them, and that they had a particular viewpoint of me as a human and as a mom. And so I just avoided everything, and I didn't see them. And my use just got worse and worse and worse. Probably, like, I don't know, 8 months after they went into custody, I had met this man who's not a drug user, who's had a job. I'm not going to go into all the details, but it was weird in the way that I met him, and I was able to lie and manipulate so he didn't see the truth about me because I wanted him to like me. We ended up dating. We didn't live together or anything, but 4 months after we started dating, I got pregnant with my fourth child. So I have 3 kids in custody. I'm homeless. I have no job. I'm somehow like trying to construct this lie of a life to this man that worked. And I got pregnant. Initially, I wanted to terminate the pregnancy. I'm just going to be honest. Like I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. And I didn't want to bring another kid into this world if I wasn't prepared to do so. So I'm grateful that I had some like thoughts about that. But him and I talked about it, and ultimately I decided not to terminate the pregnancy, which was a gift. Like my son that I was pregnant with at the time is, how old is he now? 20. And like he saved my pregnancy, did. It was a very pivotal moment in my experience. I have a lot of pivotal moments, but that one is really meaningful to me because I would not be standing here today if I didn't get pregnant with him. And I always kind of reflect on how like anyone around me would have been like, what the fuck? You have 3 kids in custody. You're a mess. Why aren't you using birth control? Why are you sleeping with these people? Not people, this person, and you get pregnant and then you're going to have another kid. Like I've heard providers say these things about people because I ended up working in some way in the DCF fields later on after I got my life together. I've had my own thoughts like that about people, in my lifetime. But it's like I had no idea and nobody else did that this would be the moment that changed my life for me. So I get pregnant with LeBron and I'm like, I decide to keep, well, I just said his name. Like, I'm going to keep the pregnancy. And I decided to go to treatment. I was like, I've got to do something. Something's got to change. So I went to live at the Lynn Residential Treatment Program in Burlington. I knew of the program because my sister had been there when she was pregnant with my niece. And so I checked into treatment. I was there for 4 months. This man and I, during the time that I was at Lund, I should talk about this. My kids were still in the custody of DCF. And through many, many therapy sessions and a lot of crying and a lot of sitting through pain, I ultimately made the decision to voluntarily relinquish custody of my older 3 children. It was not an easy decision to make, but it was the best one at the time to make. And I still stand by that decision because I really felt like even if I get sober and I do the work, I don't know that I can care for 4 children. Like it would have been it would have been too much for me. And they were all my daughters were in a home with a couple that ended up adopting them. And it was a very loving home. And my son was with my uncle. And I was just like, they're where they're at. And like, I want them to have the best experience possible. And so like, I'm not going to mess with that. And so I made the decision to sign the papers and for them to go into to be adopted. It was a very painful choice, but it was the right choice to make. And so I did that while I was at Lund, and I'm really grateful that I had the support of their staff to help me through that process. It was really important, especially therapy around making such a big decision. And then I left Lund after 4 months, and I went to live in St. Albans. And um, I don't know, there's so much that's happened, and it's 20 years ago, like so much that's happened. But I ultimately, I gave birth to my son, and then his father and I had another child a few years ago. I went to therapy. I did a lot of intensive work on myself, and like my life just like got better and better, and things shifted for me. And I don't know, I think other things that I'll share, like, in the 20 years I've had 2 children that I've cared for throughout their whole life. I've went to college. I got my bachelor's in social work, and then I got a master's in social work. I started working the field. I ultimately went to work for Lund, where I got sober for 11 years. Part of that work was being integrated into DCF. I focused my career on, helping other people who struggle with similar circumstances that I've had. And that part is amazing. My other 3 children, the older 3 that I relinquished my rights on, for the first 6 years after they were adopted, because it happened very quickly that I made the decision, I signed the paperwork and they were adopted. I made the decision that I wasn't going to force myself into their life and that I was going to wait until they were ready to have a relationship with me because My older two daughters, they were adopted by this couple. They always stayed in touch with me. They're actually sober themselves, which was really another gift from the universe that they understood my experience. And they always stayed in contact with me. There was a point where they were just like, the girls aren't ready to like continue, like it's not working. And so we need to take a pause. And so I always came from the standpoint that like, I want to do what's best for them and I want them to reach out to me when they're ready. When they were in I think they were in sixth grade. I don't know how long it was, but their mothers reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to spend time with them. And so I got to start to develop a relationship with my daughters very slowly, spending time with them. These women would let them come to my house and like, that's a gift. Was able to show that like I'm responsible and I'm sober and you trust me with your kids, the kids that I couldn't take care of. So I would spend time with them, and there were periods throughout their life, they're both 25 now. There were periods where we didn't see each other very much because they were teenagers and like I just always kind of let whatever happened. And now, they're adult women. One of them I'm much closer with than the other. And I get to have a relationship with her. Like I was sharing with Crystal the other day, there's been 3 times in the last 6 months where she's reached out to me because this is like emotional for me because it means a lot that like she reached out to me because she was experiencing some pain, like emotional pain going through a breakup or whatever. And she reached out to me for support. Like anytime she's going through something, she calls me to talk to me about it. And that's really meaningful for me because like when those kids, when they went into custody, I was like, my life with them is over. Like they're not going to want anything to do with me. They're going to hate me, because I hated my mom for so long because of what had happened to me. I was just like, they're not going to want anything to do with me. And like, I had no idea of what was possible, that where my life would be today. So I'm able to have a relationship with my daughters. I think what was really pivotal in that happening is I am a member of the sober community, 12-step programs, and a part of 12-step programs like Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous is that you have to go through these steps. There's 12 steps. And one of the steps is making amends. And so making amends isn't about like saying you're sorry. It's about having humility and going to somebody and saying like, this is what I did to you. Solely talking about what I did. This is what I did to you. This is how I believe I harmed you. And like, I need to take ownership for that. And I was able to do that with both of my daughters when they were in high school, to sit down with them and make amends to them and really just say like, I didn't do what was best. Like I didn't have the skills and this is why. And like, it was never your fault. It was never because I didn't love you. It was just because I couldn't do it. And that wasn't fair to you, and I think through that process, it opened the door for there to be healing and forgiveness so that now I do have a relationship with them, which I have a lot of gratitude for, that I get to be someone at least one of my daughters reaches out to when she needs love and support. And I just never thought that was possible. And there's so many people who give up the rights to their children or their rights are taken away and they never get to have that opportunity. And so I'm really grateful that for whatever reason, that's been able to be my experience. My son, who is 22, he did not learn that he was adopted until he was 12. My family chose not to share that with him. And although I've seen him periodically at family events over the years, we don't have a relationship. I do know that he's very angry with me, and I completely understand that. And like what I've just said to him is if you're ever ready, whenever you're ready, I don't want to say if you're ever, whenever you're ready, if you want to sit down and talk, I'm more than willing to be honest and sit with you and talk with you. But he isn't in a place to do that. And despite the pain that causes, it also is like, I'm grateful for the fact that like the door could be opened if need be. And at the end of the day, like it's really not about me, it's about him and what he needs and wants.
I just want to say your story is so inspiring.
The
It really is.
Yeah. Hope, thank you for sharing. It's crazy because I know you, right, over so many years. And often, right, of course, you have a history, but you are someone I work in the field with, and people really count on you I mean, you have a master's in social work and you lead people through, you are someone for people like where you were at, right? And I understand where you do have an understanding and compassion others may not be able to dig up, right, because of your experience. I wanted to ask about kind of that moment, right, where you said you're sitting there and you're having to do the urine test, almost fleeting moment, right, of clarity. Would you say, does that feel spiritual? Like, what is that? How, because you mentioned having more than one and throughout time, like what is that moment? What do you feel connected to? A higher power, to the universe? Is it your internal intuition and soul? How do those moments happen?
Yeah, I mean, that moment, that specific moment was something way beyond me. Like, I was so entrenched in this belief that I had everything managed and everything was going to be okay. And I didn't have a drug problem. Like, up until that moment, I really thought everyone else has a problem except me. And I can't explain sitting there and this thought just entering into my head. When I look back on it, you know, through my work in the 12-step program and like developing a relationship with something bigger than myself, you can call it the universe, you can call it a higher power. I choose to use the word God because it's easy for me to say. And that's crazy that I even say that word. Like when I went to live with my grandparents, they were extremely religious. And the form of religion in which they practice does not resonate with me as far as beliefs about other people. And so for many years, I was disconnected from this thing that connects us all, because I truly do believe that exists. I believe it's scientifically proven that there's this energy that brings us all together. But then like going into the 12-step program and really exploring that, I do believe it was something else because I was not capable. There was nothing in me capable of having that clarity and that honesty.
You even mentioned when you had met the man at first who wasn't using and like trying to almost trick him, right? But it was in you, right? When we look at where you are now, and in that moment, it wasn't of you, it was within you.
Mhm.
You've had these fleeting, right? It can be fleeting moments with people, but it pushed you through. Somehow you kept coming back to yourself.
I was just wondering how can others show up better for people grieving this kind of loss? Like, how could you have been better supported?
Yeah, what was hard is like when I was in the midst of it and like through my addiction and into like after my kids left my care, it felt like, and I'm always thinking about like, what is unconditional love? Because love in many ways is conditional in the way that we practice it. Like, I think even as a parent, I tell a kid, if you do this, I'm happy with you. If you do this, I'm angry with you. There's always a condition. And I felt like I didn't receive unconditional love. Now, does that mean that I should have somebody enable me? Absolutely not. In no way, shape, or form should anyone have been giving me cash because I would have just used it to buy drugs. Nobody should have put me in a house and allowed me to use drugs freely out of their own fear of what could happen to me. Because I think many times that happens, enabling, but I don't see it as that. It would have been like, I love you and I'm here for you when you're ready. And I never heard that. Not from a single person. And so I felt extremely isolated and alone. And even if they would have said it and I would have said, fuck you, like, and I probably would have, that's who I was. I would have been like, fuck you, you're not there for me. I might have said that in the moment, but at least I would have known it existed. I didn't have anyone that I felt that I could be open and honest with about what was going on. And I felt like unless I behave, like nobody reached out to me to ask how I was doing. No one said, hey, I'm here for you if you need me. And it also like, what I try to do now with the clients that I work with and even in my life is like listening to people's experiences and not making it about me. When I have an emotional reaction such as anger or disappointment, that's really me making it about me instead of just sharing space with someone and hearing what they have to say and not having any emotional attachment to it. Now that's hard to do, but it is possible. And I don't know. I couldn't, if I said anything to anyone, I knew they were going to be upset with me. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, so it's really unconditional love. I think what you are speaking to, even if you would have said, fuck off, you would have heard it. It would have stuck someplace, even if it was hidden, right? And then you heard it again. It would have accumulated for you. It would have maybe given you a little more stamina, right? To sit in the world that was so hard for you to sit in.
And I think that's why, like, therapy for me during that time, like, which helped me get me sober, was so important because there is, in some way, how do I want to say this unconditional um, sharing of space that is grounded in some form of love, right? There's many forms of love that, like, I could sit with a therapist and they would just listen in a way that nobody in my life could do it. Because at the end of the day, I'm probably going to say something that where the person's going to have an emotional reaction. And in therapy, I could just say it all, and someone would just listen, would provide feedback or a different perspective, but it was always done gently. And I think that's like the benefit of therapy, in the sense that it provides that space for some form of unconditional love that is just hard to get in our interactions with other people, especially people who have an emotional attachment to us.
Do you believe that's why, I mean, you're a psychotherapist. You provide counseling to others. You work with over 50% of, right, the clients we work with are managing homelessness. Do you, stepping back, see where your life makes sense?
Like, as far as like the reason that I do what I do.
Yeah, right. Because some people, I think, go into the social work field, even it's because they feel love is conditional. So if they're providing a service, they're kind of, right, they're feeling healed. But at least from my perspective, the way you provide counseling is really as you were given or as anyone could use. And it's not about you. You really show up fully. Like, you would think some people would run the opposite way, and you kind of went towards that experience. You're sitting with people who you're viewing experiencing your life as it was, which was traumatizing in many ways, right? Which held a lot of pain. Does it make sense? Did you always kind of know from young, I mean, after substance use and getting into Lund, where you're like, I think I might want to do this someday? Or it just slowly but surely you
It
got
just happened.
here? Yes.
Just I did. A year into my sobriety, I was working at an appliance store selling appliances. And then there was this job posting for the Howard Center, working in their detox program or their public inebriate program, screening drunk people. And I don't know again, this wasn't a thought like, oh, I want to get into this. I don't know. I don't even remember why I applied for the job. I just did it. And then I started doing it. And then my supervisor was like, oh, Act One in Burlington, which no longer exists, has an opening. Do you want to apply for that? And then I did that. And then, like, again, there was never like, oh, I want to help. I hear sometimes when people get sober, they're like, oh, I want to help people who've been through the same experience I have. That was never a thought of mine. I don't know why I'm here today. It's just like I did it and I found like my calling. It makes sense in the trajectory of my life that, like, it's a 180 from where I came from. And like, I get to use my experience to allow myself to show up for other people in a rare, very special, I think, in unique way. I don't know. I've just been taking one step after another and following the opportunities that open up for me. I really wanted to be, this is hilarious. When I was a kid, I was like, I want to be an inner city missionary. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Like, it makes no sense, but now I'm here and like, I'm so grateful for that. Like, and in the work that I do with clients, I'm very mindful about sharing my experience, but I'm also open on some level with people when it's applicable, as far as like, sharing what I've also been through. I don't want to make it about myself, but I think it adds value and has really allowed me to be a provider that some of the most guarded people can like open up to me and connect with me in a way that they can't with others. So I don't know. I'm just here for the
Yeah.
ride.
You just right? It's like puzzle piece after puzzle piece, but if you step back, it makes sense, and it does. I'll speak to that hope of any provider, practitioner, counselor, anyone I've known. You have the largest capacity to connect to almost anyone, and it is that ability within you not to make it about you, but to quickly identify, is there a piece of your life or experience that them understanding that or knowing that will allow them that space to open up and not feel judged.
Yeah, and I was just listening to your story when you were talking about how you didn't know what other people felt about you, but you thought you knew that they were judging you. And I think a lot of people do that, even that aren't using. So that's really important to remember that you need to just do you and not worry about what other people are thinking. And I just had one last question for you. What do you want people listening to your story to take from this? What's the big thing that you think that you're most grateful for, or um, that you want people to take away from all of this?
Yeah.
And I know it's probably really hard because your story is intense and so inspiring.
I just keep coming back to that, like, when I was in the midst of it, like, all of that grief and pain, and it's years, right? So from childhood to about the age of 25, I really felt, like, hopeless and like, there's no life for me. Like, I could not see any light in the tunnel whatsoever. It just felt suffocating and overwhelming. And like I had no idea what was possible. Like through the most intense moments of pain, so much beauty has come from it. And I think that's what I'm most grateful for is like every step of the way. The abuse that I went through as a kid, my drug addiction, what I went through with my children, those were all things that happened for a reason to get me to where I am today. And like I've been sober now, what, 20 years, like I parented 2 children. Which is a thank God for that. I'm so grateful for that. Like I have a relationship with 2 of my older 3 children. I'm not, because I told Crystal yesterday, I was like, I really felt I was destined to either die, be in jail, or live a horrible existence for the rest of my life. Any of those 3 things were possible. I did not see the possibility necessarily of where I am today. And like, I don't know anything. I don't know what's possible. I don't know what I'm capable of doing or what the universe is capable of providing for me. And like, I think that's the gratitude, the beauty that's come from it. And I'm grateful for that. And I wouldn't change what happened. I wouldn't and I can't. So it's like, I'm just here and like my job is to keep moving forward, no matter how pitiful each step could be. Right. Or if I stumble, like as long as I'm moving forward, like things are going to get better. And that has been my experience.
And that right there, right, speaks to the grief or gratitude. I don't know. And a takeaway, if you're able to accept you can't change it, you don't get stuck deep in your grief. You have moments where you feel stuck in your grief, but you identify you can't change it, and there's still possibility in following that.
Well, and you appreciate it. Like my son who passed away, he was 9, and I used to think, gosh, it's just so sad. Why me? Why did I only get 9 years? And then after a certain point, it's like, wow, I got 9 years with him. How lucky was I to have 9 years? Because you can't change it, but you can appreciate it and find beauty in your path. But I'm so glad to have met you today and hear your story. It's amazing. And I don't even know what to say. It was really inspiring.
Great. And we'll add, I know Hope will have kind of a write up, and there's some places she's mentioned that have been useful to her from AA, I know is meaningful to you, a particular book or so forth. We'll check in with you after and we'll add that to your story. Amanda, can you do the rundown of how people can reach out either to comment on the story or to be a guest in the future?
Yes, we will put all of the resources that Hope provides us that helped her in the show notes. And we have our email, griefandgratitude2@gmail.com. And we are also on Instagram. And I think that's about it for today.
Great. Thank you so much,
Thanks
Hope.
so much, everybody. And we will see you next week.
Consider being a supporter of the show by downloading episodes, subscribing to the podcast, or clicking the support link in the show notes. You can also leave a 5-star review wherever you listen. If you would like to share your story, please message the Facebook or Instagram page. You can also email griefandgratitudepodcast@gmail.com. Tune in next Monday for an all-new episode. This podcast was created to honor the memory of Declan Shaw ONeil and Jennifer Lynn Berry.